really happy about that because you'll see that this project is very much a community project and dependent on all of us, hopefully. So I'm Anna. Just to explain the structure of today, we're going to try to make this the part where we present the project very short so we have a lot of time for discussion. So I'll just give you a general introduction and then Caylee will show some of the data from a survey we gave to the community, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions and for discussion. So the project is called Catalysing Cognition Research in Africa, a novel approach to methods development. And it's funded by SSHRC, which is a Canadian social science research grant. And so, do I have power? Yes. So the project really came out of discussions amongst our own network about needing to develop measures when we wanted to do a specific project. So just for example, using the emotional Stroop test, it uses the IAP space database, but this is not, relevant or made or created sort of for Africans. And there's lots of examples like this, and so we wanted some time and money to focus on just measures and cognitive tool development. And then, as you'll see, the project grew in a different direction. But so it's a collaboration between ourselves. Our team is in Quebec and working a lot with the Université de Goma, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as Rwanda. I don't know why I didn't put that on the map. And we've teamed up with Caylee's team in South Africa. So what's the general idea of the project? Our sort of first goal was to create a community of practice to expand beyond our network and bring different researchers concerned with cognition research in Africa together. I should say that we're adult researchers. I'm doing some developmental work with Caylee's team. So we wanted to have sort of adult and development included together. And well, we very quickly achieved our first goal thanks to merging with Basilica in this network. And so the other idea for the project is to use the community to identify what kinds of measures are most broadly useful that need some developmental work, and whether that's adaptation or simply more data. That's what we sort of are planning to figure out. But yeah, so the idea is to try to identify measures that are broadly useful and then put some work into developing them. And then, so having that's sort of a project track, but our hope was that through doing that, that will also lend itself to community building. And what we're hoping is that the community of practice will sort of through that project also create infrastructure for a long-lasting community of practice where we can work together on methods and measures development problems, and also sort of share existing measures and tools and also protocols to harmonize data collection, and just have a place to sort of network effectively. So in a little bit more specifics, our plan is that this will unfold in a few different phases. This is a 2-year project, but I guess we're hoping that the community of practice is sort of that is built, but is long lasting and continues to change and grow. But in phase 1 our goal is to create the community virtually, and also to survey all of you to identify measures that are important across, for a broad range of researchers, and also to get some data on sort of different issues that people are facing methodologically. And then the idea is that we'll take from that survey data, sort of select a set of cognitive measures that look like they'd be broadly useful and develop task force and start to put some work into them. So whether that's adaptation or different types of adaptation, or maybe there's just a need for more data across different sites. And so then the plan is to work, once we have those cognitive measures in shape, what that will look like exactly is also something we'll need to figure out. But then to do a larger data collection with those measures, and also some measures of sort of adversity, demographics, and context, so we can start to relate that data. And the idea is to sort of share the entire process, also the results with the community after each phase, get your feedback sort of continuously, and ultimately have a nice set of measures and protocols and have everything be open access and easy to use. Yeah, and I should also say that it's a work in progress. So if you have opinions on how to do this, like, we're very, very open to reshaping that based on what's useful for everyone. So where we're at now is that we've completed phase 1. And so many of you probably thankfully filled out our survey. So today we're gonna show you just a summary of the results, but I've also shared the raw data in case you're interested in looking at it more, which will show you where in our virtual community of practice. So, right. So I was amazed, but just because everyone's so busy. So thank you all for taking the time to do this survey. It was 42 people, and as you can see, quite split between Africa and non-Africa. Here's a breakdown of where everybody came from. I should say this is actually underrepresentative of work that's going on in Africa, because I just put people's primary affiliation here. So this is just showing primary affiliation. And then in terms of the range of people who filled out this survey, mostly professors, well, a range across career types and levels. So some clinicians and practitioners, mostly researchers, some graduate students, some professors. And then in terms of population age that people worked with, again, really covered the lifespan. A lot of people, not surprisingly, in development, working with children at all different age ranges, but also we have some sort of neuropsychologists working with older adults as well. And right, and then in terms of areas, it's not shocking since it reflects sort of our areas and our communities, but it's a bigger range than I expected. So I guess a little bit surprising. Again, a lot of people working in child development, psychology of work, neuropsychology, some social psychologists. I think that's reflecting our colleagues' network from Morocco. And yeah, but in terms of sort of specific focus, a much bigger range, mostly around cognition, mental health, and whatnot. So I think I'm going to let Caylee take over now and tell you about what people had to say about measurements and measurement development.
Great, thanks, Anna. I think, oh, can I control it? Oh,
I gave you the power. I hope it works. If not, I'm happy to click for you.
How does that work? That's quite cool.
Does it work?
No.
Okay, I will.
You can just, yeah, you can just navigate for me if that's okay.
Sure, I'll try to get my timing precise. I'll be fine.
All right, thanks, Anna, for the intro. And just because there was a comment that popped up in the chat, I wanted to just mention that the project that Anna and I are working on does span, or sort of, we're talking infants all the way up until older adults, focusing on cognition. So obviously, through our contact with Basilica, we realized there's a huge chunk of the development or the early childhood group trying to do the same thing with the AfriBCD. And so we thought it'd be worth joining through that. And then, but obviously we have a whole other side of the adults that we're working with as well. So it really does include both. And there was just another quick question on the chat I saw: is the survey closed, or do you still want responses? I will happily send the link. We still have the link. So we can maybe send it around in an email again, or I'll grab it in the chat at some point and give that to you.
Yeah.
So these are the results of the survey. So those of you who did the survey will know what the questions were. Those who didn't, we were asking about what measurements people use or are currently using, what measurements they feel might need adaptation, and what types of adaptation or development is needed. So really to just get an idea of what are people using, what do they feel needs to happen, and through this community then identify some that we feel like we could work on. So for the first question, again with these awesome word clouds, which I love, this was what we're measuring. Executive functioning came up obviously massively. I think a lot of that is really childhood, a lot of it is adults. toolbox too. And then as you can see, there's some more memory came up a lot, reasoning, processing speed, early learning. So really quite a broad range, but very much still within the cognition world. And then just in terms of executive function, obviously that's split up into the inhibition, working memory came up a lot. So there's some people working on the individual executive functions as well. So in terms of the measures that need work, we have just split this up into the adult and the child because we thought it would be more beneficial that way, particularly because this group is an early childhood group. So if we have a look at the child group or the child word cloud, we can see the ones that came up the most for those that need work. So matrix reasoning, which I actually am not that familiar with, came up a lot. But the earliest toolbox and IDELA that came up as tools that are currently being used, but tools that might also need some additional work. The card sort task, Stroop, digit span, even sort of broader cognitive and intelligence tasks like the NEPI, and Hearts and Flowers, more executive function. Kaufman even came up. So really it was quite a broad range. Which is indicative of how much work needs to be done in terms of measurement within sort of majority countries as well. Go next. And then I'm trying to summarize the work that needs to be done in the best way possible. So we had people just write exactly what they think needs to happen. And so the biggest things that came up, which doesn't come as a surprise to anyone, is contextual adaptation for every task, because the majority of the tasks that we're using were not developed in majority world countries or low and middle income countries. They were developed in the Western world. And so that contextual adaptation has become increasingly necessary. Or even something else that came up is also actually task creation. So just developing new tasks from scratch within these settings. Another one that came up was accessibility. Many tasks are not open access. The software costs a lot, which means that that access to the tools then becomes very limited for people working in low resource environments or in institutions that have limited funding as well. So that came up as quite an important point for development. Translation came up repeatedly. I'm going to speak a bit more about that in the next slide, but translating the tools, it's not an easy feat. It's not a simple feat. Needing to translate, but then actually trying to understand whether that translation is feasible and still works is another story. Construct validity came up a lot. I think that goes hand in hand with broader testing and local norms. So needing to get bigger samples and actually develop local norms for the test that we're using. So then you can just scan, but if we have a look at executive function, specifically what came up the most with that was contextual adaptation, developing local norms, because many people are collecting great executive function data within Africa even itself, yet most of us are using different tools or different things. And so, but there is some crossover. And so being able to develop local norms, I think it's feasible and something that does need to be done. There was a need to develop self-report measures for executive function. I think that was slightly more needed for the older children and adult population, but that's something that doesn't really exist at the moment and needs development and creation. And then broader validation of the tools. So being able to show that these tools really do work and that they're measuring what we think they're measuring. And then, yeah, we can send this around if anyone wants to have a look at the data more closely. But as you can see, many of them are just contextual adaptation, broader testing, and local norms. Then we also asked people for any additional comments based on the questions that we'd asked them and the work that they do. And I pulled out some of the ones that I thought were really, really interesting and things that we could possibly discuss. And as a community, even start to tackle these questions that we all face on a daily basis when we're doing our work. And so The first comment was about multilingualism and code switching. Is it a positive or a negative thing? In many of the African countries, there's more than one language. There's multiple languages happening at one time. And there's really a need to start to look at that more closely and understand how that affects both measurements of or cognitive measurement, as well as how that's affecting development. Then complexities of translation. Kathy and I have gone on about this quite a lot in the recent work that we've been doing, in the sense that we've realized that direct translation doesn't always work perfectly. When you then don't directly translate, the tool loses its validity. It's no longer the gold standard. You've now changed the tool and it doesn't count. We even faced that issue when it came to the strengths and difficulties questionnaire in English. We've decided that some of the British English doesn't actually match the South African English, but we weren't allowed to change it because then it was no longer the strengths and difficulties questionnaire. So translation is a really difficult task and something that I think as a community, we can really all learn from each other and discuss and find the best way forward. Another thing that comes up a lot when you're working in Africa, particularly if you're flying in, and I know I've even experienced it as a white researcher in a rural community, a lot of children or participants get really shy or they don't want to participate. How do we make people feel comfortable when it comes to testing? How do we do this in a way that doesn't create anxiety with our participants in Africa? And then one I've touched on already as well is portable devices and software that can support neuropsych tools are too expensive. So that's one of the things we really, with this project, we're hoping to create. Maybe Anna can jump in and just tell us about the tools that we're wanting to work on once I've gone through these. And then the next one is informed consent. That came up a lot. In fact, informed consent is often presented at too high of a level because our ethics boards need it to be written in a specific way. Through the community, we can determine the best way to present the research and to present this informed consent to our participants. Then complexities of interpreting cultural level variation in cognitive outcomes from an ethical perspective. This could probably be a whole discussion on its own, but that's when it comes to cultural level, who is better, who is worse, how are we interpreting these scores based on the cultural sensitivities as well. And then ecological validity of the measures. Cognitive skills are often assumed to be universally important skills. That's not always the case, though. We know that in different cultures that may differ. And this has implications for intervention. If we're prioritizing certain skills that are maybe not actually priorities within those settings. And then the nuances of creating a tool that is appropriate across cultures. Is it actually possible? Is it worth it? There's a lot of give and take when it comes to that. So it's not an easy task. And I think when you come together as a community, we can maybe work on that a bit more. And then obviously what came up is funding and costs of research again. So many African institutions do not have local funding, and getting funding to run projects in Africa, it takes a few more steps than it would normally. So that came up a lot as well. So those were just some of the additional comments. And I don't know if you want to jump in and quickly talk about the tools.
Yeah, so one thing that we're doing in this project that I'm excited about and I think will be broadly useful is can't help with the cost of portable devices, but can help with the software side. So we've been working with PsychoPy, which for those of you who don't know is an open access tool to run. You can create basically any kind of a psychology experiment. And the challenge is they don't have they didn't, now they do, have a way to use it to run experiments offline. And so we've worked with them to basically develop a way that you need internet one time to like load an experiment, but then you can go with a computer or a tablet, which you still have to find money to buy, unfortunately. But then, and you can sort of, use this software free open access to create whatever you want, then go into the field and run it offline on a tablet or a computer. And then whenever you're back connected to internet, it'll upload sort of automatically to the secure server, PsychoPy server. So I think this is something they wanted to develop, and it was pretty easy. And they showed me like a prototype recently. So they'll be getting back to me with a version that we can like play around with and give them feedback, but it'll be an open access tool for everyone to use. And then with like the support and the documentation of PsychoPy, which is great. So I think that'll be really helpful. I was personally very frustrated getting into this field and realizing that there's no like offline touchscreen open access tool. So that will be helpful that we've done that. And then also for whatever we develop in this project, we can use and share on PsychoPy along with like instructions. So part of it is to make everything easy. So yeah, I'm excited about that. If anyone has any questions, let me know.
So yeah, just to say, we were trying to use ePrime, and ePrime only runs on a Surface Pro, a Microsoft Surface Pro, which is a very expensive portable tablet to take out into the field, whereas sort of your cheaper Android tablets or even iPads are much easier and cheaper than a Surface Pro tablet to take out. So with PsychoPy then being able to potentially to run these tasks on tablets that aren't Surface Pros will also hopefully create a bit more access to tools. All right, Anna, you can go to the next one.
Yeah, and you can run it on anything too, so you don't have to get like a certain kind of tool to match with it, which is how it should be.
Okay, so Anna has given the outline of the project, but I thought it'd be helpful to just give the exact next steps. So we've done the survey. Perhaps we can actually send it out again. I'll put the link in, so if anyone here wants to do the survey once again, we can do that. And basically from the measures that came up in the survey that people highlighted needed some sort of work, as a community, we hope to select a few of those that we can then either develop on PsychoPy to make it open access, and help to develop and adapt these tools, and then using the tools that we've chosen and adapted, actually collect more data. Again, for those tasks that people mentioned needed broader testing or validation or even local norms, we can then collect data at our sites. So currently it's the Democratic Republic of Congo, in South Africa, and then in Quebec City. But as a community, if anyone else would like to also collect some data and have the capacity to do that, that would be even cooler. So we would share tasks, share protocols with the community, and then people would be able to go out and collect some data. Then through this community of practice, we'll invite ongoing development with the community. We also will do a website, hopefully, and we've decided to kind of merge this with Basilica and create a shared website and a space for the community. And then we have started to create the community of practice in Teams, Microsoft Teams. We actually did ask this as a question, what platform people would like the community to sit on. I think we gave the options of Teams, Basecamp, and then just if people had any others, and the only other ones that came up were Slack. And so it appeared that people wanted to use something they already were familiar with. So we're really going to test it out on Teams, see how feasible it is. But hopefully, if this community of practice and this project in itself can just keep growing, we can find a good home for it too. So I don't know if you want to show Teams now, or should we leave it?
I can just very quickly, or maybe I can't. I can't escape my PowerPoint one. I'm just going to stop sharing and share again since it's angry at me. Okay, can you see the Teams? Great. Yeah, so I'll just quickly show, it's just a skeleton version, and the idea is also that we can adapt, everyone can adapt it to be as useful as possible. But what I've done is, so people who did the survey, there was an option to, do you want to be invited to the virtual community of practice? I guess we'll send out something else, again, to the listserv, so you can consent to get an invitation, or maybe we'll just send the invitation. You could say yes or no. But yeah, so I put a general description of the project here in files. I put, if it ever loads, so I put this presentation as well as the full grant, if anyone wants more details. And then I put, I need to make sure it's de-identified before we invite everyone, but I'll put the raw data in survey responses. So if anyone wants to look at all of the information in the survey, it's interesting and useful. So we'll put that there. And then I created channels. This was based on our ideas in the grant, as well as some of the things Basilica mentioned that she wanted to do. So a channel that'll be related to data sharing, open science. Also, people can share data in folders in the files if they're something they want to do and they're sort of ready for. I created some of these guides are just blank Word documents, but I can populate some of them, and also everybody should be able to sort of add to things if they want to, but just information on what open access databases there are that could be useful. Funding resources, again, having a guide to different types of funding resources, grant resources and information. Also, people can always post information they want to share with the community in the main post page in these different topics. And then we made a channel for this measures development project. So if people want to join those task forces or give specific input, we'll grow that part of the project here. And then a place to share measures, tasks and tools. I started some and just compiling information like lists of cognition and adversity measures, like very short summary. So if you're looking for something new or want to know what people are using, what your options are, it's all in one place. And this should be, I don't know how to reorder these. I'm not a very big Teams user, but this should be first, which is just if you wanted to write like a brief introduction to yourself. And yeah, but again, like if people want to add channels or think something's unnecessary, it's meant to be a work in progress that sort of is shaped like Wikipedia, made amazing by the community.